Hey, this is Tucker with a video on writing a strong hook strategy for your essay. Often I hear students say that the worst part of writing an essay is just getting started because they have no idea how to begin their introduction paragraph. So this video is going to give you specific strategies you can use to start your introduction paragraph of an essay. Now, this is the basic structure of an introduction paragraph. You have the hook strategy, which begins with your first line of your introduction paragraph. You have a transition that leads your reader from the hook to the last sentence of your introduction, which is your thesis statement. So oftentimes you have to kind of show the reader how the hook meets or leads into your thesis statement. The whole purpose of a hook strategy is to grab your reader's attention, right? I'm one of your readers. I'm an English teacher. I have many students, so I'm reading a ton of essays. You want to make sure that I want to read your essay, that my interest is piqued, that those first few lines are really interesting. You can also use this hook strategy or a hook strategy to create context for what your reader is about to read. So kind of setting the stage for the essay or building background, because some of you guys are going to be reading or writing for history and you'll be writing about historical events or important people, and your reader might not have a lot of background knowledge, and you can use a hook strategy to help build that background knowledge for them. The hook strategies we're going to talk about in detail are starting with an anecdote or a story that reveals a connection you have to the text or the topic that you're writing about, painting a picture with really rich sensory details of historical background. And I use the word paint very purposefully there, right? I want this to be a really dynamic picture you're creating in the mind of your reader. Third, you're going to begin with a quote and analyze the significance of the quote and how it connects to the topic you're writing about. The fourth strategy is to share a shocking or unusual fact and kind of show how the fact is related to your topic by analyzing it. And the last one we're going to talk about is presenting a question or even a series of questions or presenting a problem to really get the reader thinking about your topic on a deeper level. So let's go through each of these ones. I'll highlight the purpose and then I'll give you an example. I do not intend for you to write these examples down, but I thought they would be helpful for you so that you could see what does this hook strategy look like in practice. So the first one is to begin by telling a story or starting with an anecdote about how your past life experience has allowed you to understand a particular topic. So it shows that connection between you and the essay topic. This is the only case in which it's okay to use first person. I, me, my, because obviously you're telling a story about your life. The trick is that when you transition to your first body paragraph, you have to transition into the objective third person. So just make sure if you start with a personal story, you have to transition into third person with your first body paragraph. So here's an example. All we did was drive, and each time we stopped was to visit another site. That chilly morning in Washington, D.C. was different. We stepped out of the hotel and walked 4 blocks. Suddenly, I was amazed by all that surrounded me. The Capitol building off in the distance, the White House to my left, a vast field of grass and 2 ponds reflecting a towering white monument. "What's that?" I asked my dad. "That's the Washington Monument." I began to think, a monument, a city named in his honor? This must be someone who made a difference. The more I learned about George Washington's courage, leadership, and patriotism, I realized he had indeed accomplished a lot. So here this student begins with a story about a trip to Washington, D.C. with their dad, and the moment when they realized George Washington must have been pretty important because there are all these things in Washington, D.C. that are named after him. So I would argue that the personal anecdote hook strategy goes all the way until he says, "I began." And then that line, "I began to think," is kind of like the transition, moving from the story to the essay topic. And then the bold line is the thesis statement. And the thesis statement is the most important sentence of your entire essay. So this thesis statement makes it clear that this student is going to focus on Washington's courage, leadership, and patriotism. So those are going to be the topics of their 3 body paragraphs. The second hook strategy is painting a picture of the historical context or background. So if you're writing about a novel that is taking place in a certain moment in history, or you're writing about a historical event or a historical figure, you can really use sensory-rich description to bring that moment to life or provide some background before that moment that you're going to write about so that your reader understands what you're about to say a little bit better. So here's an example. In the summer of 1812, Napoleon Bonaparte marched his grand army across the Niemen River into Russia. The decision to enter Russia would prove to be a grave error despite Napoleon's confidence and prior military victories in Belgium, Holland, and Spain. Ultimately, Napoleon's army was defeated by freezing temperatures, food shortages, and disease as the cold Russian winter raged on. So here we know the essay is going to be all about Napoleon's army, their defeat in Russia, right? And the 3 body paragraphs of this essay are going to focus on the freezing temperatures, the food shortages, and the disease, and how each of those 3 things contributed to Napoleon's army's defeat in Russia. So we have this hook strategy that really paints a picture of when this happened, why it was happening, where it was happening. So thinking of kind of like the when, where, why when you're thinking about giving some historical background for your reader. You can also begin with a famous quote and then follow that quote with some analysis so it's clear how the quote connects to the topic you're writing about. And the purpose of this is to present maybe a respected voice or even a controversial voice on a topic, or getting your audience thinking about some issue in the essay by presenting a quote about that issue. So this particular essay begins with a quote by Hillary Clinton, which some might respect and some might feel is very controversial. So she says, "There cannot be true democracy unless women's voices are heard. A democracy places power in the hands of the people. If individuals are not granted equal access and representation, the government cannot claim to be a, quote, true democracy. The lack of female voices in the United States government creates an imbalance of power based on gender. Despite the small percentage of women currently at the highest levels of government, pioneers like Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, and Condoleezza Rice are leading the way towards gender equality in politics." So here we have a famous woman in politics, Hillary Clinton, starting the hook strategy, right, with this quote. Then you have about 2 sentences of analysis where the writer is explaining kind of the significance of this quote in the context of women in politics, right? So the quote is the hook, the 2 sentences that follow it is the transition, and then you have this thesis statement in bold. And it's clear that in this particular essay, the first body paragraph is going to focus on Hillary Clinton and her role as a woman in politics. The second paragraph will be on Nancy Pelosi, and the third paragraph will be on Condoleezza Rice. So in addition to the hook strategies, I hope this is reinforcing kind of what you learned about the importance of parallelism and presenting your 3 main points in your thesis statement. The fourth strategy is to begin with unusual or shocking fact. And again, you want to follow that unusual or shocking fact with analysis because you want to make sure your reader knows why the heck you started with this particular fact. So this does a really nice job of grabbing the reader's attention and grabbing their interest because shocking facts are super interesting. So here is a shocking fact. Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, could spend $1 million per day, every day, 7 days a week, and would not run out of money until he was 311 years old. Most people would agree that he has reached a point of financial security. In fact, it would be almost impossible to figure out how one could spend $1 million per day. For most Americans, finding an occupation that is satisfying, earning enough money to live comfortably, and figuring out a realistic blend between work and leisure are 3 essential factors in beginning one's career. So obviously, this is a whole essay about why we choose the careers we choose, right? For most Americans, we want to be satisfied with our job. We want to earn enough money to live comfortably, and we want to have a nice blend of work and leisure being kind of relaxing time. So those are three factors that impact the decisions we make about the jobs we choose. So those are what our three body paragraphs are going to be about. But this person starts with this crazy statistic about Bill Gates, who's obviously wildly successful and has made a lot of money in his occupation. So that statistic is the hook. The two sentences that follow are kind of explaining the hook or breaking it down. So that's our transition. And then you have the thesis statement at the bottom. All right, last one. So some teachers do not love when students start with a question, and usually that's because the questions aren't very good. However, there are essays I have read where students begin with a question or even a series of like 3 questions that build on each other that are very powerful, but they have to be thought-provoking, interesting, dynamic questions. Otherwise, it's not going to be a strong hook strategy. Another kind of way to do this is to present some kind of a problem that a lot of people face and use that as a way to kind of set up your essay. So the example I'm going to share is to share the questions. And really the purpose is to drive deeper thinking in your reader about the central idea or issue or problem or event that you're going to be writing about. So in this example, there are 3 questions, and the first question is really broad, and then the next 2 questions kind of get narrower and narrower, leading us toward the thesis statement. So the essay begins with, is it true that bigger is always better? Could it be that society's insatiable desire for more is in many ways resulting in less? Once people have accepted the premise that more choice is better, is it possible to reverse this trend? For family-owned businesses or family-owned stores, bigger is anything but better. Box stores like Walmart threaten small family-run stores, result in fewer local options, and negatively impact the long-term health of the local economy. So here we have a really beautifully done hook with 3 questions. A really broad question followed by 2 related but more specific questions. After that, we just have like a 1-sentence transition. For family-owned stores, bigger is anything but better. And now we know, okay, we get a sense of where this essay is headed. In the thesis statement, it's clear that the 3 body paragraphs, one is going to focus on how there are like basically the big stores threaten the small stores, so they probably go out of business. 2, that it results in fewer local options or local products. And 3, that the long-term health of the economy is harmed by these big box stores. So we know that those are the 3 main points that they're going to focus on in their body paragraph. So hopefully some of these strategies will help you to tackle your introduction a little more easily next time.